LUTs can't be trusted. LUTs are cheating. LUTs do damage to your image. These are just some of the nonsense claims that I've heard flying around the internet about LUTs. But if you look at big Hollywood movies, they've all been graded using at least one LUT. So why do LUTs seem to work better for Hollywood colorists than for the rest of us? What's the secret sauce? Short answer, they understand how to use the right LUTs for the right job and in the right way. That's what I want to talk about today, and that's what I want to show you a couple of practical examples of here inside of Resolve. So let's dive right in, and I want to show you the first example of using the right LUT in the right way for the right job. First example of this would be what I'm going to call a viewing LUT, or an in-camera LUT. This is a LUT that's designed at the very beginning of a production process, actually in pre-production, before anyone goes out and shoots anything. Let's say that we're working together on a feature film, and we're sitting together and we want to establish what the movie is going to look and feel like before you even go into production. We're going to sit here in my room and we're going to look at either some test footage or some sample footage from other projects and build a look that represents the creative intent that you wish to embody when you finally do go to grade your images. We're going to sit together and we're going to design that look, and I'm then going to cook that look into an in-camera LUT for you. It's going to be loaded into your cameras while you're shooting, and for the duration of your production, you're going to be viewing your image through that creative intent, through that rendering that we established here in the room. That means every time you look at your image is going to look as you want it to look when you finally get into the color grade after you've wrapped. Now, does that mean that the color grade is represented in that LUT? No, the color grade hasn't even begun. But the overall rendering, the overall viewing, the overall feeling of the image is going to be represented. And that's a role that LUTs play really, really well. If LUTs didn't exist, if LUTs were wiped off the face of the earth, there really wouldn't be a great vehicle for me to convey that creative intent that we've established in here out to your camera and out to your production so that you can have it at the ready and see all of your exposure choices through that LUT for the duration of your production. So that's one great example of using a LUT in the right way for the right job. And of course, we still need to use the right LUT in that situation. In that situation, the right LUT is simply a well-built LUT that I've built for you that represents your creative intent. By the way, I hope you don't mind me casting you as my cinematographer collaborator, because that's the role that you're playing, at least for this duration of the conversation. But that's one really good example. Let's take a look here inside of Resolve and see what that looks like. Right now, I've just got a timeline of log state images here. Haven't done anything at all to them. And I'm going to apply this viewing LUT that I created for an actual production. That's what this LUT is. And as you can see, it's actually doing two jobs. It's taking my image from its log state and returning it in a display state, and it's imparting creative character along the way, as we decided upon when we were building this look here in the suite. Okay, so it's kind of doing two jobs. Because it's doing two jobs, this is a type of LUT that I like to call a hybrid LUT, because it is imparting both creative character and a transformation from a camera state or a camera color space into a display color space. All right, that's what a hybrid LUT is, and that really backs us right into one of the things that we all need to understand about LUTs, that those high-end colorists all understand really well about LUTs, and that's that LUTs expect one particular color space as their input, and they return one particular color space as their output. And if we, as the end user, use the LUT at odds with that expected input color space or intended output color space, or if we are not aware of those things, we're going to have problems. We're going to become one of those many people on the internet complaining that LUTs don't work, LUTs are problematic, LUTs do damage, because we are not using the tool in the proper way, okay? So this is application number one, using the right LUT in the right way for the right job. A viewing LUT on set, an in-camera LUT on set that's been well built and built for the production and for its creative intent. That's a great use of a LUT, and if we didn't have LUTs, I'm not sure what we would use. There's really not much of a substitute for them, and this is a great way to really use LUTs well, okay? Let's take a look at another example. I'm going to wipe this out for now. We're going to right-click and say Reset All Grades and Nodes. And I'm now going to go into the clip level of my node graph here, and I'm just going to quickly set up my color management. Right now, I don't have any color management on these images at all because there's no color management happening on set, which is what we were sort of modeling, right? Now we're back in post-production, and I want to look at the way I might use a LUT effectively in the color grading process. I'm going to select all of my clips here in this timeline, right click, and I'm going to add them to a log C3 group that I've already assigned, or already created rather. Everything in that group is going to be mapped from wide gamut 3 log C3 into my working space of DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. If I now go back to the timeline level of my node graph where I was a moment ago, I go to my gallery and I've got this look plus out stack that I've saved. I'm going to middle click that to apply it. And you can now see I've got 2 separate ingredients in play here at the timeline level. This here is my color space transform. This is the completion of my color management. This is what's getting me out to my display space. And upstream of it, I have my look. This is a LUT, but it's a different type of LUT than the one that we were looking at a moment ago. This is what I would call a creative or a look LUT, because it is not taking me from color space A to color space B. It's keeping me in color space A. In this case, DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. This is a creative or a look LUT, as I said, and its main feature is that it expects and returns the same color space, and all it does along the way is impart creative character, okay? So quite different from a hybrid LUT, which is imparting creative character and technical transformation. Creative or look LUT is just imparting that creative character, and it's meant to be slotted into a pipeline like I'm using here. More of a LUT that we would use in post-production than in production. Now, when we were talking about the in-camera LUT, it seems maybe a little bit more intuitive or obvious why that would be a difficult thing to be replaced and why we might need that when we're on set. But when we look at a creative LUT like this, one of the questions that often comes up is, well, couldn't you just recreate this using your color grading tools inside of Resolve? Why are you relying on this black box to impart creative manipulations? Isn't creative manipulation what we're here to do inside of Resolve? And my answer would be, sort of. In this case, what we're looking at is a look. This is not something that is grading shots. This is something that is imparting overall creative character, sometimes in ways that are difficult to do or difficult to do quickly and cleanly inside of Resolve. Whereas with the LUT, I can literally apply it with one keystroke simply by applying it here in this node, right? So that's how it's being utilized here, and that's the role that it plays, and it's really giving me a foundation under which I can grade more successfully. Another thing that I want to point out here that would make this a right LUT being used for the right job in the right way is if this is a LUT that represents what the production team were looking at when the images were gathered, that means I'm not going to see many surprises. I'm not going to encounter many problems when I apply this equivalent LUT in post-production to what was viewed on set, because the image was gathered looking through this same lens, if you want to think about it that way. If that's not the case, it's a situation that you may have encountered before where you say, hey, I want to use this LUT, and you're even observing the rules that I'm talking about. You're observing the color space that's expected, and you're good with the color space that's being returned. You're using you're using the LUT in the right way, and you're using it for the right job, but you are not using the right LUT. You're using a LUT that is quite different from the LUT that was used to photograph the image. You apply it, all of a sudden you get all this contrast or all this color, and you realize, oh man, I've got to go and do a bunch of upstream work in my color grade before that LUT in order to make things work. That's an example of using the wrong LUT in the right way for the right job. In this case, we've got all three: right LUT, right way, right job, okay? So this is my other favorite example of a LUT being used in a really, really helpful way, in a really, really supportive way of the production, or in this case, post-production process. There's others as well. LUTs can be used in a variety of helpful ways when we're performing production and post-production tasks. These are two of my favorites. And the last thing that I want to touch on here in our conversation today is this idea about the right LUT. We just talked about one criterion for the right LUT, the right LUT being one that represents the way the image was viewed when it was gathered, right? That would be number one. But the right LUT is also about a LUT that's well built and that comes from a trustworthy source. Remember when we were talking about all those high-end colorists at the beginning of this conversation, and I pointed out that they simply seem to be having better luck with LUTs than we do? One of the reasons is that they have color science teams to support them in the creation and in the adjustment of their LUTs to make sure that their LUTs are really well built, really robust, not ever going to cause any problems, only going to do what they need to do. That's something that distinguishes the LUTs that high-end colorists are using from the LUTs that many of the rest of us are being offered and in some cases using. There's a lot of bad LUTs floating around on the internet, in case you haven't noticed. And that's part of the challenge of using LUTs well, is knowing how to differentiate the good ones from the bad. So where do you find the good ones? I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you where to look for all the good ones and where all the bad LUTs are hanging out. But what I can tell you is that I've got a couple of great LUTs to offer right here on the channel, right here that I built personally that I can really vouch for. The first two would be my 2383 Kodak emulation and my Fuji 3510 emulation. Those are free. There will be links to those to download in the description for this video. I also have my Voyager LUT Pack, which by the way, I'm using here in this application. This one is coming from my Voyager Essentials Pack. And this is a collection of 17 LUTs that do a bunch of interesting stuff to your image and help you get to a great creative starting point. And they do so making creative manipulations that would be really difficult to do quickly and cleanly right within Resolve. In some cases, not even possible to do right within Resolve. The other fun thing, if you look at the Pro Pack that I have here within Voyager, is you actually can break out the individual pieces that define these Essentials LUTs and LUTs like them. And you can look at things like just your contrast curve, or just your split toning, or just your color palette, where you're going to change your color weights around, or just these modifier LUTs that can do anything from giving you a black and white image to more saturation shaping, all kinds of fun components that you can mix and match. So those are some examples of LUTs that I can definitely vouch for because I built them, and I built them very carefully with lots of rigor. There's lots of other LUTs out there that you're simply going to have to use your best judgment. But the rule of thumb that I like to use is if you're not sure a LUT is trustworthy, it's probably not trustworthy. You're usually going to know the trustworthy LUTs because of the source that they're coming from. So I hope that's a helpful primer on the way LUTs can really be used most effectively, the way that I like to see them used in production and post-production, and the role that they can play in a really, really world-class production and post-production process, as opposed to some of the stuff that we hear on the internet about LUTs being problematic or untrustworthy or any of the other myths that we hear floating around. And I hope that those myths are not only decluttered and debunked for you, but that you can become part of the messaging that helps to move us out of thinking that these things are true about LUTs and instead embracing them as the powerful tool that they are when used in the right way for the right job.